Hi, this is Dr. Carl Leopson, the University of Arizona, and I wanted to do a quick course introduction video for you folks who are just online students. And I'll try to keep it brief. You can go through it yourself. It's posted at the website, so you can go back through it for specifics, and most of the documents that are included here are also at the website. So what are we going to do in this? We're going to quickly review the objectives for this presentation. I'm going to do some introduction of myself. We're going to look at course expectations as an activity. We're going to review the syllabus and some of the major graded activities. We'll review this presentation, and then we'll talk about what's up and due in the next week. So from this presentation, I really want you to know a variety of ways to contact me. How to apply course expectations. We'll do that as an activity online. Name some of the major graded activities for the course. Locating the online activities. Describing the timeline for the quizzes. So for me, I was a classroom EBT teacher about 20 years ago, and worked in rural areas and inner cities, and eventually I went back to the University of Kentucky to get my master's degree, and at the same time worked as a district behavioral consultant to a small county school district, and at the same time got my master's in assistive technology, or selecting assistive and adaptive devices for persons with disabilities. That was back in the early 90s when computers and this kind of electronic technology was just brand new to schools. I was invited back once again to the University of Kentucky to get my doctoral degree, and I got my degree with Dr. Mike Nelson and Dr. Terry Scott, focused on emotional and behavioral disorders. At the same time, I was really honored to be a research associate with the National Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports when they started their project. And then about 12 years ago, I came out to the University of Kentucky, the University of Arizona, to take a faculty position, and I've been here ever since. And I'm the director of cross-categorical programs, the unit chair for special education, and serve on a number of committees. I do most of my research in emotional and behavioral disorders and selecting interventions for kids with behavioral disorders. Let's take a look at course expectations. Now, for folks who are coming to class in the traditional sense, we'll do this as a in-class activity, but you guys will do this as an online activity. Later in the semester, we'll talk about the National Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports and how that fits in with the issues of kids with high incidence disabilities. But for right now, I want to model that for you by having some expectations for our course. And you would do the same thing in this model of positive behavioral interventions and supports. So our acronym for the course is PAR. PAR the course. Be prepared, be active, and be respectful. And in an online discussion activity at the D2L website, you folks who are in the online version of the course will do a discussion activity centered just around letting me know how you could be prepared, active, and respectful in this course in the online version. Let's take a look at the syllabus. That's the big thing. That's what you all want to know. So we're going to look at, this is actually, when you skip ahead, this is the undergraduate version. We need to skip ahead. Let's see. Skip ahead to .509 syllabus review. All right. So we're going to look at ways for you to contact the instructor. Best way to get in touch with me is by email. All right, absolutely the best way to get in touch with me. I'm in contact with my email all day long. You can call my work number and get in touch with me that way. Home number if you need to, but contact me through my work number. If you need to discuss something more specific, then you just need to ask a quick question, get hold of me through email. If you need to sit down and have a discussion with me, or just have a phone discussion with me, set that up through email so that we can have a longer chat. All right. This is an online course. There are absolutely no class meetings. It meets August 27th through December 10th. There is no required text for this course. Readings will be assigned by me, and they'll be available on D2L. That's one of the, I think, the nice things about this course, the way I've arranged it, is that we'll be reading from a lot of good and solid practitioner journals. Take a look at the major course activities. Because you are not going to be actually in class in a traditional sense, instead of having those in-class sessions, we'll have discussion sections. And it could be that for the discussion section, you'll be responding to an article. It could be that I'll send you out to do an activity, like use an assessment tool and do an assessment and come back to the discussion section and describe what you think about the assessment tool. But you'll have a series of at least 10 assignments that are discussion section assignments worth 3 points each, so that's 30 points. And they're really graded on the basis of content, clarity, and your grammar. So in your discussion postings, make sure the content is relevant to what we're discussing. Stay on topic. Be clear in your discussion or your comments about the topic. And then use good grammar. All right? Use good grammar and reasonable spelling. There will be 2 types of quizzes, and they're quizzes weekly. All right? There is a class quiz and a reading quiz. There will be about 12 of each, right? And together worth a total of about 70 points. That point total may change a little bit. We may drop a quiz here or there if it seems to work for us, but your final total will always be a percentage of total points. All right. So there are class quizzes and reading quizzes, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Research synthesis. This is one of the larger activities. So as graduate students, we feel like it's important for you to be able to digest research that's out there and write about it. And so what I'm asking you to do is to write a research paper that includes at least 3 research articles, that's in APA format, and be about 4,000 to 5,000 words long. And we'll talk more about that in a moment too. And that's worth 50 points, and it's graded on a rubric that focuses on grammar, content, and synthesis. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Then a final exam. Final exam at the end of the course. It is for you, obviously, and for the students that I have in the traditional version of the course, an online or a take-home exam. And the questions are such that it really doesn't matter if you have access to all the materials. In fact, it's great if you do, because then you can give me great answers. This is the class schedule. Now keep in mind that the syllabus can be downloaded at the website, and for the first reading quiz you will need to download a copy of the syllabus and have it either on your computer as a PDF that you can look at while you do the first reading quiz, or print out a paper copy to have next to you, because you'll need to know some specific things, particularly from this schedule and about the major graded activities. So we're starting, this first week is kind of simple and brief. It's the introduction and syllabus, and it'll be an easy week for you. Maybe get going on other classes too. The second week we'll do an overview of history. We'll start to talk about high incidence demographics and why this is called a course in high incidence disabilities. We'll also do a little activity on perceptions of people with disabilities. The third week, we'll talk about issues in assessment and a little bit about lesson planning and CBMs, or curriculum-based measures. Week 17, issues in curriculum instruction and issues in placement as they relate to kids with high incidence disabilities. The next week, we'll start to talk about some individual disability areas, and the first will be intellectual disabilities. And at that point, I'd like to have you to give me the topic of your synthesis paper. The next week, we'll talk about learning disabilities and learning strategies. Week after that, we'll talk behavioral disorders and school violence, and at that point, I'd like to have the references, the 3 articles, a reference to the 3 articles and a link to them for your synthesis paper. The week after that, we talk about physical disabilities. The week after that, we switch from talking about specific disability areas that are high incidence disabilities to talking about more broad issues like cognitive, perceptual, and language characteristics of these kids. And that's when I would like to have the outline or notes for your synthesis paper. The next week we talk about learning characteristics and instructional theory. The week after we talk about emotional and social characteristics of kids with high incidence disabilities, and read a really interesting article on medications. The synthesis paper piece that is due will be the first review. So I'm going to group you guys in teams of 2, and you will be doing reviews of each other's drafts, and I'd like you to do 2 draft reviews before you submit the final. This is in part to make sure that you've got a good paper before it comes to me, and to model good instructional technique, and because it's just good instructional technique to teach kids to plan their writing, to outline their writing, and to go through multiple drafts that are reviewed by peers. So the next week after that, the November 12th, we'll talk about positive behavioral supports. The week after is general classroom management, and that is when your second review is due of the draft from your peer. The 26th, I'm making no bones about it. Nothing due that week. That is the week of Thanksgiving. Just take a break. December 3rd, we'll talk about functional assessment, which is my research area. And I think it's important for you as graduate students at a research university to get some insight on the topic that is closest to the research of the person teaching the course, and that's mine. And that's when the synthesis paper is due. I'd like to have it December 3rd so that I can have it graded by the end of the semester. It's going to be a lot of reading of, I think, probably some really interesting stuff coming from you guys. There are about 15 of you in the online course right now, and so it's going to take a lot of work to get all that graded. The week of December 10th is just going to be some reviews, some notes, and I'll be releasing the final exam. Quizzes, right? There are a ton of quizzes in this course, right? There's a quiz, 2 quizzes every week. One is a class quiz, one's a reading quiz. One reason I do lots of quizzes is because I want to model frequent measurement. And in special education, it's just the way it ought to be that we don't wait until a midterm to figure out if kids are learning something. If you're teaching a kid something, you ought to assess that immediately to figure out whether or not they've learned it. And that's what we're going to do here. And I know folks are often concerned that they're going to have lots of quizzes, but they usually find that they learn the information really well, and then by the time the final comes around, they just ace it because they've had an introduction to the material, they've learned the material through discussion, they've had quiz about it, and then they take the final and they've been through it enough that they really know what they're talking about. They really have internalized it. So there will be activities called class activities at the D2L site, and it'll be a reading, a discussion, or some kind of participation activity where I send you out to do something and come back and report on it. There will be a quiz online associated with it, and you can take the quiz during that week. It's open at the beginning of the week for that week of class, and we'll look again at that in just a minute. I hope to have them graded by the next class, and they will stay open so that you can, if you miss something on them, you can fix them, because that's something else I want to model, is that instructors shouldn't be in the way of students learning. They should be there to help students and learn from errors to get the correct answer. So you're going to kill it. You're going to do great. So for example, I made this video for you, and one of the objectives is identifying a variety of methods for contacting an instructor. We covered that during the review of the syllabus. What's the best way to contact me? Email. Absolutely. So there is a quiz question. On the first class quiz, it says, what is the best way to contact the instructor? What if you need to have a face-to-face or more in-depth discussion? Right. So all of this class actually is designed in the way that I do the instruction to model the type of good instruction that we should do with kids who have high incidence disabilities. And so most folks, well, everybody, they find that they just ace it because it's designed for you to succeed. There are class quizzes and there are reading quizzes. We'll be doing a lot of reading, and you'll be doing a little more than the students who are in undergraduate students who are in the traditional version of the course. So this also models frequent measurement. You're going to get lots of relevant practitioner sources. We're going to use source documents, not just practitioner journals. And it's a great model for professional development. I want you to know where to go to find great readings after you leave this course. I want you to know what journals to look to and what journals are relevant and what journals you like. All right, so you'll have some real background with the literature that's out there. There will be objectives for the quizzes that will be listed on the assigned readings pages. Do the reading during the week that it's assigned. Take the reading quiz. It'll be open at the beginning of the week, so you can take it anytime during that week. I'll try and have it graded by the next class. But when the next class starts, I am likely to close that quiz. This won't be one that I'll have people going back and editing answers, although I'm starting to rethink that one. For example, one of the reading objectives, the reading for this week is the syllabus. And I want you to read the syllabus carefully. And one of the objectives is reflect on a topic of interest in the syllabus. The topics are listed in the syllabus. We talked about them. And one of the quiz questions is, find a topic of interest in the syllabus. Why is it interesting to you? Right. So that's just a model for what the rest of the course is going to be like. It's very directed. It's very step-by-step. It's just the kind of thing that works really well for our kids who have high incidence disabilities. So here's an example of how you'll fit all this together. So during week 1 of class, which will start August Tuesday the 27th, do the Class 1 online activity, do the Class 1 reading, which is the syllabus, then take the class quiz, take the reading quiz. The next week's activities won't open up until the next week starts, till week 2 starts. And it's not a move at your own pace kind of course because I want lots of interaction between folks. And if some of you get into the discussion areas way ahead of others, it won't be much of a discussion. So as you can see, it just goes week by week. For you guys, it's simple. It's a little more complicated for the folks who are in the traditional course. Great, and that's the quizzes. There are class quizzes and reading quizzes. People ace them because they're designed for you to succeed. Let's talk about the research article review, or the research synthesis paper. All right. The focus for this is on extending your knowledge, making you kind of an expert in an area, developing your writing skills as a graduate student, and modeling writing practices that are good in instruction. It's worth 50 points. You select journal articles, okay, on a topic. So you pick a topic. Let's say it's like video training for kids with autism. Or let's say you're really interested in school violence and kids with high incidence disabilities. Let's say you're really interested in Asperger's, or some particular issue within Asperger's. Let's say you're really interested in the use of responsiveness to intervention instead of traditional methods for identifying kids with learning disabilities. Maybe you are in another field and you're interested in the speech and language growth or characteristics of kids with behavioral disorders, and you've not really taken a look at whether or not there are great differences, and you want to focus on that. I'm open to just about anything, and what you do is you find 3 articles on that topic. And one of the first activities that I ask you to do for this course is to use the U of A online library to find and reference articles. So you'll get some practice at that. So I want you to have 3 sources in an area of high incidence. We'll do an outline, you'll do 2 drafts that are reviewed by peers, and you'll present the final to me the week before the course ends. 5 to 7 double-spaced pages, and I'll explain that in just a minute, and it will be graded by rubric. The journals I would hope you would look to would be journals like Beyond Behavior, great practitioner journal. JSET, the Journal of Special Education Technology. Teaching Exceptional Children, which is a wonderful journal, practitioner journal. Teacher Education and Special Education, Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders. Looking for peer-reviewed journals, guys, not newspaper articles, not just invited pieces, all right? So peer-reviewed journals. And by peer-reviewed journals, that means any article that goes into these journals, any articles that I write for Beyond Behavior, Teaching Exceptional Children, JSET, those journal articles have to go through review by other faculty members at other universities, blind review, where they say yay or nay and make changes and they bitch and they argue until there's final agreement that it's an article worthy to be published. And the reason I want you to use those is because they've been through that kind of an in-depth review. So we can really be sure that they've got some really solid evidence behind them. So if you're, that's why I want you to tell me what your journal articles are pretty early, so I can kind of vet them and make sure that they're from sources that are peer-reviewed and acceptable. A little more about specifics. We're going to use APA style. If you don't know what that is, look it up, and you're going to learn a lot about APA style. And as far as general specifics, 1-inch margins, 12-point type, and that comes out to probably 7 to 8 pages, I would think, because here's what I would like to see in the format: that you have an introduction paragraph or 2 to your article. That's probably a page and a half, double spaced, 1-inch margins, 12-point type. Then 2 to 3 paragraphs where you explain what Article 1 was. What was it about? What if it was a research piece? What did they do? What did they find? What did they get from it? What did they conclude? If it's a practitioner piece, what's the background? What's the topic? What do they suggest? All right. That will take it could take 1 to 2 to almost 3 pages. Then review the second article in the same way, review the third article in the same way, and then you do what is really the more difficult part, which is a synthesis of the 3. So if you were looking at speech and language characteristics of kids with behavior disorders and you have 3 different articles, I would like you to say, well, these 3 articles agree in this way, and write a little bit about that, but they disagree on this, and write about that. And you could do 2 or 3 of those synthesis topics, or synthesis of the articles. And then a summary paragraph or 2 that says, well, here's what it means to me in my work, here's what it means to people in the field, here is, if I look at all of these together, here's where we ought to be doing more research, or here's where we're falling down in the field and getting our work done. All right. I'll have more for you on this. I'll try to get you some reasonable examples so that you'll have them to look at when you're doing your work. I won't leave you hanging on that, guys. It will be an excellent activity. It's that kind of thing. It's a lot of what I do. I do a lot of writing. I think I have a fairly good understanding of writing, and I think it's really important that you be good writers. So let's review quickly what we've done. We went over objectives. I introduced myself and my background coming through being a special education teacher, being a district behavioral consultant, having a master's degree in assistive technology, having a doctoral degree in emotional and behavioral disorders, being a fellow of the National Center on Positive Behavior Supports, and having been here and being an associate faculty member, associate professor for the last 12 years. We talked about the course expectations. There's an activity in D2L to help introduce you to those expectations and a little discussion section I'd like you to participate in. You can go find that for the first week of course. We did a syllabus review, and the syllabus is the reading for this week. All right, so that is what you'll look at and read through and have next to you as you do the reading quiz. We're reviewing right now, and as far as assignments for next week, hop on into D2L. You know, they changed D2L on me a lot. I have this pretty well organized, and they've just thrown a lot of my organization into disarray, so I'm having to redo quite a bit. I will ask your insight as we go on how we might best adjust the D2L site. I got no problems making changes and trying to update things so it works better for you. Because, like I said, I'm not here to get in your way. I am here because I want you to walk out really having a strong understanding of every single thing that we talk about. And so I'm going to ask for your input, and I'm going to try to design this in a way that works to make you all successful. I will see you online, guys. Let's see. We don't need to talk about that. Don't need to talk about that right now either. We'll talk about next week work. I'll post something midweek or at the end of this week to get you ready for next week's work. See you online.